Hey everybody, it's Christina of CraftyPaws. I'm here to share a birthday card that I am making for my mom's 77th birthday, which is next week. This is a design team project for Topflight stamps, and that's where this For the Love of Stamps by Hunky Dory stamp set is from. It's called Forget-Me-Nots. It's actually a stamp set for like sympathy cards, but I thought it would be perfect for my mom's birthday because she and I both share our love of blue. So I am stamping this out on some scraps of Strathmore Bristol paper, and I'm using VersaFine ink to get a nice crisp image, as well as make this water safe because I'm planning on doing some watercoloring. And what I'm doing is I've taken a couple of Arteza Real Brush markers in yellow and then a couple more in blues. So the centers of all of the flowers are going to be yellow, but I didn't want all the flowers to look exactly the same. So some of the centers I'm coloring in with a lighter yellow, and then some I'm coloring in with a darker yellow. And if you're interested in the particular Arteza Real Brush marker colors that I used, please check my blog post, which I will link to in the description box below. So I'm kind of trying to alternate the center flower centers being different shades of yellow, and I'm going to coordinate that with the flower petals being slightly different shades of blue or teal. I'm using a lighter aqua color for the flowers that have the lighter yellow centers, and I'm going to use a darker, like light blue, for the flower petals that have darker yellow centers. And I'm using an Arteza water brush to just blend out. And that's one of the things with these markers. You don't want to leave the ink to fully dry on the Bristol paper or the watercolor paper, which you could also use with these, because then you'll get more of a harsh edge look where the ink has fully set. So if you do 2 or 3 flowers and then use the water brush to blend that out, I find that you get a nice, really soft watercolory look. And you can see I've got a little tissue paper or tissue on to the left here of the screen. And that's just to dab off excess water, because I find that this water brush sometimes lets out a little bit too much water, but I can see it on the brush tip. So when that happens, I just dab it off onto the tissue and keep watercoloring, keep blending. And the way I'm using the markers is just to lay down some color. The ink I'm putting closest to the flower center, so those areas will be slightly darker. And I'm also adding the ink directly to petals that are under another flower's petals. So that's kind of the effect that you would see if you were to see a cast shadow from the flower above the flower that's below. So here you see me using the ink just underneath that other flower, and then I'm using the pen directly onto the flower petals closest to the center of each flower. And I'm just doing that over and over, alternating between the lighter flowers with the lighter centers and then the slightly darker flowers with the slightly darker yellow centers. And I'm just coloring in 2 or 3 flowers at a time and blending out the ink from the markers so that I don't get any harsh lines. And this isn't taking very long. I've got this done at triple the real speed, but as you can see, it's going by really quickly. It's just a matter of blending in between so that you don't get any really dry edge looks. And the blending is really easy. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit so that you don't have to watch me coloring the entire bouquet of forget-me-not flowers that are in this heart shape. So as you can see, I've got the first layer of color down on the entire heart bouquet. And now I'm going to go in and add the second layer of color. And this is because I want to create a little bit more variation in the bouquet. I mean, if you look at a bouquet of flowers, even if they're all the same type of flower, you're going to see more color variation than you would if everything were identical. Nothing's identical in nature. So I'm going in and doing a second layer right around where I want the color to be much more saturated. So toward the center of each of the flower centers, I'm adding that second layer of darker blue. And now I'm going to go through and water blend everything out with this water brush. And you'll notice here that I didn't just do a couple of flowers and then blend out, a couple more flowers and blend out. I actually did all of the flowers that were the darker blue with the darker yellow centers. And I wasn't afraid of creating too harsh a line or anything like that from the markers directly coloring onto the card front, because the paper was not fully dry yet. So there was a little bit of moisture and I knew I could soften the edges. And I'm just going back in and doing a second coating of just blending out, because I noticed some of the color edges were creating slight little lines, a little blooming, but actually I don't even mind that. It kind of has a more artistic quality when I think when that happens. Now, I also stamped out a few of these individual flowers and I'm coloring them the exact same way. I'm gonna add the centers as yellow and then the petals as the light blue, and then I'm gonna blend out, but this time I'm using a clear Wink of Stella pen because I wanted a little shimmer on these individual flowers. And I think just adding that little touch of shimmer or sparkle adds so much to these individual flowers that I'm going to be fussy cutting out. Now for the sentiment, I took the sentiment from a Power Poppy stamp set called Party Time, and I'm prepping some dark blue navy cardstock with my EK Tools powder tool, and that's to prevent the excess powder from sticking to the cardstock. It kind of prevents that static cling. And I'm using Versamark ink, and I'm stamping the sentiment out twice. It came out a little bit hazy, so I decided a second stamping would make a more kind of thick impression of the sentiment. I'm using a coffee filter to catch the excess embossing powder. And I really like for sentiments using the Ranger Superfine white embossing powder. And notwithstanding the use of the powder tool, I still got some excess powder, so I'm just brushing that off with a dry paintbrush. Now I'm using my heat tool to heat set the sentiment. As you notice, I am heating the front and the back because I don't want too much warping in the cardstock. Now I'm using a white gel pen. That's a Uniball white gel pen to just do the dot of the exclamation point, because for some reason it was missing on my stamp. Now for the card base, I'm just taking some navy cardstock, and that's the same color cardstock that I use for the sentiment, and that's my card base. And then I decide for the card front, I'm gonna layer it on really pale blue matte. It's a really thin matte, and then I decided that would frame out the card front nicely and not have it look so stark. And then I'm gonna put that on my card base. And you'll see here, I'm just worried about the top and bottom because I'm gonna trim off the sides so that there's an equal amount of the card base showing around the entire card front, even now that it's matted. Now for the sentiment, I want to create little fishtail banner ends. So I'm just cutting down the center and then connecting from the corner of the little banner to the center that I've cut down with my scissors. And there's your double fishtail banner. And now I'm taking some Stampin' Up! Dimensionals. These are double-sided foam dots that actually are not too thick. I wanted a little bit of dimension, but not too much. I'm even using the little edge of that double-sided foam adhesive sheet, and that's where I want to place it. So I'm going to go ahead and take the release paper off, put that into place right in the center of that bouquet of forget-me-nots. And here are the extra little forget-me-not flowers that I had separately watercolored and fussy cut out. I had inked the edges, by the way, with a Memento Tuxedo black ink marker so that you don't see the white edge of the paper. I didn't like the placement of that little tiny forget-me-not there. I'm putting it up toward the upper left instead. I like how it adds dimension and overlaps the a sentiment banner as well. So it looks like the bouquet is kind of overflowing over the banner. And I'm adding the fourth one there. I did 4 of these little individual flowers, 2 medium size and 2 small. They're all part of the same stamp set, and I like that added dimension. For the inside of the card, I thought I would use the Forget-Me-Not branch of flowers that's also in the stamp set, and I'm using another piece of that pale blue cardstock for the card liner. This time I'm using VersaFine ink to stamp out the image again, because I want a crisp, clear image of the flowers, and this textured cardstock doesn't lend itself to a clean impression, so I had to stamp it out twice, and this time it really did come out nice and crisp. I'm also going to add a sentiment. This is also from the Power Poppy Party Times stamp set, and it says in 3 fun fonts, "Enjoy your big day." And I'm again using my Misty tool because that textured cardstock really doesn't give that clean impression that I wanted. 2 impressions seem to work, and now I'm just using my ATG gun to add some adhesive to the back of that card liner, and then I'm going to put it into place inside the card. Now I wanted to add one more finishing touch, and these Pretty Pink Posh clear droplets are so pretty, especially on flowers, I think, because it looks like dewdrops or little droplets of water on the petals. So I'm using 2 of the small ones. They're a 4mm, and then one of the larger ones, which is 6mm. And I'm using Ranger Glossy Accents to adhere those to the card front. And that's the finished card. I hope you enjoyed this process video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're interested in this stamp set or any other international stamps, please check out Topflight Stamps. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys are having a wonderful crafty day.